The Longevity Podcast is now on the air. Yes, let's do this, guys. The Longevity Game Podcast.
This is where we take a science-based approach to fighting off father time to help give you more life in those years. And guys, today you're going to need to take notes. Grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, because we're going to need to take a lot of notes here. We're going to talk today about why men live about 5 years less than women do. And that's approximation. Anyway, so we're going to talk today about why women live longer than men. Why is this? You're not going to believe it, but most of it, about 75% to 85% of the things that cause men to die earlier is preventable stuff. I heard this joke one time and it went something like this, like, why do men die earlier than women? And it's, the answer is because they want to. Yeah, that didn't work. Okay, all right. I know that wasn't very tasteful, but I mean it's just a fact that men they take a little bit more risk, than most women do, and there's a whole bunch of other things, and so we're going to get into that today. Today the podcast this is episode 1. We have relaunched the podcast, and we are doing it a little better. And we're going to cover more topics pertaining to longevity and health and fitness and hormonal replacement therapies, just all the stuff pertaining to longevity. And so it's going to be great. So I'm glad that you're here. So I hope that we have a great time today. I'm going to be hitting you with a lot of information. All right. And so I've combined a lot of stuff. And so I'm going to be talking as I read. And so, obviously I'm not going to read the whole thing, but we're going to have a conversation, a one-sided conversation. So here we go. So, researchers consistently report that men die earlier than women in every country. This isn't just for the United States. Like, men are dying earlier in every single country. And so in 2021, the gap was 5 years, right? So men died 5 years before women. Women had an average age of 73.8 at death, and men 68.4. All right, so now in 2023, that we actually it widened. That gap even widened. It was 5 years. Now it's 5.3 years. And so the crazy thing is, like I said, it's not inevitable. It's not something that is set in stone. There are things that we have in place that kind of that kind of make us, that make us more likely to die early, but it's very few things, right? Like chromosomal differences. Women have 2 X chromosomes, and men have 1 X and 1 Y chromosome. And so, women have that backup X chromosome, and so it allows them to select the healthier X in each cell. Whereas men only have the X and the Y, and that Y chromosome that we have actually has a higher predisposition for mutations, and so that doesn't help, right? And then, hormonal protection, with women, especially premenopausal, they have estrogen. Estrogen is, it has anti-inflammatory and cardiovascular protective effects, right? Studies show that high estrogen levels in premenopausal women reduce heart risk. And, I tell guys this all the time who are on testosterone replacement therapy. As soon as their estrogen it goes up just a slight bit, they want to get on some kind of aromatase inhibitor, which is not good, but because when you get on an aromatase inhibitor, it's basically an estrogen blocker, and it blocks the conversion of testosterone to estrogen, and it thereby lowering your estradiol levels, because it not only prevents the conversion of testosterone to estrogen, but it also causes you to use the estrogen you have on board and can crash your estrogen. So no bueno at all. And so, because of women who have estrogen, premenopausal women, they have this reduced risk of heart disease. They have a reduced risk of Alzheimer's disease. They have a reduced risk of bone mineral density issues. But after menopause, the risk increases dramatically, right? This is the importance of women getting on estradiol after menopause, like as soon as possible. Other things, immune and cellular aging. Women's immune systems respond more vigorously to infections and vaccines and may clear pathogens more effectively than men. And so there was a review that noted that men age faster at the molecular and cellular level. Dang. And they have higher prevalence of lethal diseases like heart disease and stroke. And we're going to get into why that is here in a few minutes. While women experience more non-fatal conditions like depression and arthritis, right? And then again, there's body size and metabolism. These are things that we can't control any of these things, right? There's 4 big things that we can't control. And so, our men's larger body size may work against longevity, right? In many species, larger animals have shorter lifespans. Pretty wild, right? Testosterone's linked to risk-taking behavior. That's true. Also, testosterone can raise cholesterol levels. It can raise your blood pressure because it increases your hematocrit and thereby raising your blood pressure, women don't have as much testosterone as guys do, right? And again, the estrogen situation, right? Estrogen supports longer telomeres and greater antioxidant protection, and we don't have a lot of estrogen, unless we're taking testosterone and we're not on an AI, an aromatase inhibitor, again, an estrogen blocker, right? And so those are the things that we can't really do anything about. But that's it. Just 4 things, right? The big stuff, we do it big. Guys, we do it big. So let's talk about risk-taking behaviors and injuries. Check this out. Boys and men take more physical risk. We know that, right? Neuroscience studies show that the frontal lobe, which governs judgment, and it also plays a role in behavior, right? And the way that we express ourselves. If you ever see somebody that has a frontal lobe stroke, it's not good. It really changes their personality. But anyway, our frontal lobe develops more slowly in young males, contributing to higher rates of accidents, violence, and risky behavior. Men account for 2/3 of preventable injuries, related deaths, and are over 3 times more likely to die of homicide and suicide than women. Whoa, that is wild. 2/3. That's wild. Smoking and substance use. So men smoke and drink more than women. There was a UK survey cited in a University of Florida review showed that 16.4% of men smoked versus 12.6% of women. And then 31% of men engaged in hazardous drinking. I would advise against that. Versus 16% of women. I haven't always been doing this. I used to be a roughneck offshore, right? And, we like to party. I did some partying in my day. I'm almost 50 now. I've settled down. I've slowed way down. All right. I'm actually a pretty boring guy. But yeah. Smoking and substance use. Never use any substances other than tobacco. But women make better choices when it comes to that stuff. Occupational hazards. Men work in more dangerous occupations. Construction, military, firefighting. We do set ourselves up for situations that could kill us, And fatal workplace injuries occur 9 times more often in men than women. Plus exposure to toxins and physical hazards like asbestos, silica dust, heavy machinery, all kinds of stuff. When I worked offshore, I was exposed to all kinds of different toxins and just worked around them all the time. We had an MSDS sheet for all, as you should, according to OSHA, you should have a material safety data sheet, MSDS sheet, for every chemical that you have on that you work around. Right, at your job. Your business should provide that. In case something goes wrong, it has all the information on that particular chemical. We had files and files and files of MSDS sheets. It was wild. This is before they stored all this stuff on the computers. Sun exposure and skin cancer. Men are less likely to use sunscreen and more likely to work outdoors. Harvard's Alan Geller notes that 2 out of every 3 melanoma deaths occur in men, largely due to behavior rather than biology. Guys, we got to talk about melanoma for a second. Let's take a break for a second from this. Let's talk about melanoma. It is a deadly skin cancer. And, a lot of the times it's not you that discovers it. It's your friend, right? They might notice something on your back that you can't see. And what's scary is sometimes it can be in your hairline. You'll never know. You'll never know it's there. So just always kind of just feel around, make sure there's nothing new growing in under your hair, something that's sensitive or just feels a little weird. You might have to have somebody look at that. All right, don't waste any time. Melanoma will kill you, right? It really will. Suicide and mental health. Even though depression is diagnosed more often in women, men die by suicide at a much higher rate. Men tend to avoid seeking help for mental health issues due to cultural norms and masculinity. I actually have a published paper or a published journal article on this. Men, we're we're terrible when it comes to mental health and just going to see the doctor, period. It's based mostly on just traditional masculinity norms. We just, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I can't tell you how many people I've heard say something like that before I got into medicine and then after. Some people, have said, more than once. I've heard this more than one time, and it's like, there was nothing wrong with me until I went to the doctor. Then now I'm on 5 different medications, and they felt great, because most of the things that we have problems with is, if you think about it, kidney disease, liver disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all those things are silent killers. You don't know it's happening until it's too late, and then by then, it may be too late, now you got to go on meds, right? I get it, guys. I've been there, man. I know. So, healthy lifestyle factors. Evidence from a Taiwanese cohort study shows that non-smokers, people with adequate physical activity, and those who eat sufficient fruit and vegetables increase their lifespan by 2 to 3 years each. All right. Now, that doesn't sound like a whole lot of time, 2 to 3 years, right? Participants who adhered to 5 healthy lifestyle behaviors, so not smoking, sufficient exercise, moderate alcohol consumption, and healthy weight and adequate fruit and vegetable intake, gained over 7 additional years of life and reduced annual healthcare costs by 28%, right? Meta-analyses across 17 countries. And a meta-analysis is like a collection of studies that show a particular thing, right? So a meta-analysis across 17 countries suggests that combined healthy behaviors can add up to 16 years to your life expectancy, with men gaining up to 12.2 years in some populations. All right, and so I think we should talk about this. There's lifespan, right? And there's health span. I personally don't want to live to be 100 if only half of my body's working, and I can't get out of the wheelchair. You know what I mean? So there's something to be said about lifespan, but there's even more to be said about health span. I think that, increasing the life in those years is the most important thing. And so that's why, we should be actively engaged in cardiovascular exercise and weight resistance training. In my opinion, weight resistance training is a fountain of youth. Imagine like this, after 40 or from 40 to 50 and on, you lose about 20% of your muscle mass per decade, right? 10 to 20% per decade. And that compounds over time, And if you think about it, like and I have this conversation with my patients all the time. What do you want life to look like when you retire, Because inevitably, what's going to happen if you're not intentionally and proactively going out there and building muscle now? It gets harder to build muscle the later on the longer you live, And so if you're not out there intentionally and proactively building muscle, you're going to continue to get weaker, because that's not the only thing that declines. It's not just muscle mass. There's all kinds of stuff that declines as we age, as we know. We make far less growth hormone, far less testosterone. We make far less ATP, far less NAD+. We have mitochondrial dysfunction. All these things are in decline. And if we're not proactively doing something about that, by the time we retire, all those really adventurous things that you wanted to do during those later years, it's going to be tough to do those things. You're going to have to, your life's not going to look like you want it to look. How you picture it in your mind, it's not going to look that way if you don't go to work right now. You got to start working out. You got to start eating your protein. I have these conversations all the time. This is so important. But if you want to live longer, not just having a lifespan, but health span, having a life in those years, you got to do this. You got to do it. And there's other things, and we'll get into that. Women, and I was just talking about this, but women are 33% more likely to visit the doctor and schedule preventative visits twice as often as men, right? Men often delay seeking care and forego routine screenings, allowing diseases like hypertension, high cholesterol, and cancer to progress silently. It didn't even mention liver disease and kidney disease, you know? I mean, if you don't know, you don't know. And if you don't check, you don't know, right? So you got to, men, we can do better than this, right? 33% more likely to visit the doctor than women, than men. Men are 33% less likely to visit the doctor than women. And that's pretty rough stuff. How about social supports and loneliness, right? I might hit some nerves here, guys. You guys feel this? Men report weaker social networks and are less likely to be socially connected. You know, loneliness is linked to higher risk of stroke, heart disease, and premature death. And then researchers note that male loneliness, isolation, contribute to that longevity gap. You know, I don't know. Why is that? Why do we find it so hard to make friends? You know, I mean, I don't know. That's a tough one, right? Is it because we don't want to look weak? We always want to look. There's a guy I follow on TikTok, and he's always trying to make friends, right? He's got a garage gym, and he's always so funny. He's always trying to approach people as they walk by. All these dudes walk by, and he's always trying to get their attention and get them to come and work out with him in his garage gym. And he's just socially awkward, and he doesn't know how to. He doesn't know how to be a bro. You know, he doesn't know how to hang out with dudes, and but he's always trying. You know, and he just does a terrible job at it. I can't remember what it is, but when I find, I'll find out who it is, and I'll put it in the description if you're ever wanting to just laugh your tail off. It's so funny. My God, he's funny. But yeah, we just have a hard time making friends. You know, why is that? I consider myself a pretty gregarious guy, you know, and I do have access to a lot of people because I have a lot of patients that come in, and a lot of my patients have become very, very close to me. And what I mean by that is I care very deeply about my patients, but there are a select few that have become my friends, you know, and so I have a little different situation, but most guys just go to work and then they come home, you know, and they just don't have, you know, people that they can rely on, you know. And another thing that I have is church. I go to church, and there's all kinds of social groups for men at church, right? Now, there's a lot of men's groups, you know, and those kind of groups are great because you can really connect with other men, and usually in those situations, men are very open to displaying vulnerability, you know, and then you can make some great connections, and you can really meet people who are kind of going through similar stuff that you might be going through, and there's lots of male support, you know, from people who have already gone through those things and are now doing better, you know. So if you're going through something like that, guys, you know, I would highly encourage you to seek out, you know, some type of support system. You know, some of you might not be churchgoers, but you can find a lot of help, you know, at places like that. So let's cruise on. Socioeconomic factors. Men experience higher rates of homelessness, incarceration, poverty, and labor force hazards. And these factors reduce access to health care and increase exposure to violence or substance use. The Men's Health Network points out that there's no nationwide public health campaign focusing specifically on male longevity. That's a tragedy. Man, somebody needs to do that. If you guys are listening and you're paying attention and you have the resources, check it out. The Men's Health Network points out that there is no nationwide public health campaign focused specifically on male longevity. If any of you guys can crank that up, man, that'd be awesome. I think that you would do well. So let's look at trends and recent findings. There's some historical changes. The U.S. life expectancy gap widened to 7.8 years in 1975, then narrowed to about 5.2 years by 2005. And this was this supposedly reflects successful anti-smoking campaigns and workplace safety regulations. But then the gap widened again in the 2010s as the opioid crisis and the COVID-19 disproportionately affected men. And then cross-sectional data shows that absolute difference is in age-adjusted death rates between men and women rose from 252 to 315 per 100,000 between 2010 and 2021. So a global analysis, as far as disease burden goes, a global analysis from the Lancet Public Health using 2021 global burden of disease data found that males have more disability-adjusted life years from 13 of the 20 leading causes of death, like road injuries, ischemic heart disease, chronic disease, cancer, those kind of things. While females live longer, but experience more illness and disability. Men had 45% more health loss from heart disease and more than twice the injury related to dailies. And that is, so what can be done? What do we do, guys? Well, I have some ideas. So the longevity gap is driven generally by modifiable behaviors, right? So we got to get a handle on those things, right? Modifiable behaviors. Let me say that one more time. Modifiable behaviors are just that. These are behaviors that we can change. These are things that we can fix. And so, the best thing, promote healthy lifestyles, right? Why not encourage non-smoking, regular physical activity, healthy eating, moderate alcohol consumption, and maintaining a healthy diet? Those things are things that we can do. It's not easy, but it's simple. You know what I mean? Some things are easy to do, but they're also easy not to do. And another thing is, making a lot of changes at once is hard. And I see that all the time because I see a lot of patients who are trying to lose weight, and trying to really get back into shape, and just feel better. And if you try to start too many things at once, it's going to be very difficult, right? It's going to be actually unsustainable. And then you're going to beat yourself up for it. And then you're going to say, I just can't do this. And you're going to give up. You're going to throw your hands in the air. And then you're going to give up altogether. Right. So you can't start too many of these things at once, but you can do one or two things. And if you do one or two things, that could possibly change the game for you. How about we target risk behaviors, increase public health campaigns against smoking, excessive drinking, drug misuse, and risky driving. Right. Men account for the majority of preventable injury deaths and overdose. Right. So starting campaigns against those things might help. Also, we need to improve access to preventive care. Like well-man visits, right? I don't particularly do primary care at my practice, right? But at my practice, which is next level TRT, we're longevity and performance medicine practice. In my practice, I don't particularly do primary care, but what I do is I take the opportunity when I have a gentleman come in to really dive in. Really take a look under the hood. I get labs. I get to check everything. So I can see if something's, maybe they come in for this, but we need to make sure that everything that we want to do here isn't because of one thing and there's something else brewing under the hood that's preventing, for you from achieving your goal. You know what I mean? And so healthy man visits, it's not necessarily a place where people go to find out if they have high blood pressure or high cholesterol or, all that other stuff. But I find that stuff out because I know this may be the only opportunity that I have or that this person may have to really dig in and find out if there's anything going on. So I try to capture that time. And if we discover something that needs to be done, then, I'll help. I'll help with that. If they need to see a specialist, I refer them to a specialist, But I have a really good conversation. And I feel like it's important. So, if you're in healthcare, have those hard conversations with your male patients because, God knows we need it and we might not want it, but we need it. So, early detection, hypertension, diabetes, depression can prevent premature deaths. How about addressing occupational environmental hazards, right? Strengthen workplace safety regulations, provide protective equipment, and reduce exposure to toxins. Right, men's higher mortality from accidents and occupational diseases, it really reflects their representation of high-risk jobs, right? When I worked offshore, holy moly, I saw a guy cut in half, and it was dreadful. I think everybody that I worked around had missing fingers or teeth, and it was a rough environment, And, that's one job, There's men do hard work in hard environments, and it's dangerous a lot of the times. So enhance mental health support and social connections. Develop programs that reduce loneliness and stigma around mental health care. There used to be, I don't know if it's still around, but there used to be an app called meetup.com, right? And it's not a dating app, all right? Although I'm sure some people use it for dating. But you could create communities where you could, like you could invite other people into these communities. People would find you on the meetup.com website. I don't know if it's still around, but it was awesome. Like I created a cycling group called Morning. What was it called? My gosh. Rise and Grind. That was what it was. Rise and Grind. And it was a cycling group, and we met at a coffee shop. And we all got to hang out, and we discussed, things that we liked and things in cycling. And then we would go out for a ride, which was fun. You can do stuff like that. You can create little groups like that of other men who might like to do the same thing that you like to do. There's somebody for everybody. I really believe, and there's men out there who are looking for connection, and that's a great way to do it. So, and lastly, policy and research initiatives. National men's health strategies can raise awareness and integrate sex-specific data into health policy. Right? Researchers stress that interventions could recognize biological and social differences across the life course. Yeah, well, that's it, guys. I mean, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Men, we got some work to do. I really think it's important. I think from all the stuff that we talked about, I think the biggest thing that I hope that you take from this is that we men need to be more proactive in our health, right? That's the biggest thing. Whether it's, getting off the couch and just walking a few days a week, anything that can improve our lifespan and our health span is it's going to be a little hard, right? At first, and I have this conversation too. I say, when we first get started exercising, you don't want to go crazy, right? 2 to 3 days a week out of the gate. And when you go in, I want you to do resistance weight training, but you don't have to go heavy, just lightweight. Just get your body used to having weight on top of you, right? Get used to lifting weight, get used to moving through the movements, right? Because any little bit of weight you're going to be sore the next day, even with the smallest amount of weight, just because you're lifting a little weight and it's repetitive, and those consistent movements are going to just cause you to be sore. But if you do too much, too heavy, too hard, too fast out of the gate, you're going to be exhausted. You're going to be in pain every day. You're going to be sore, right? And eventually you're going to fall off. And then you're going to hate yourself for it. You're going to beat yourself up about it. And then you're going to say, this ain't for me. And then you're going to stop. And so I always tell people, just go light and don't overdo it. You can commit to 3 days a week. If you commit to 3 days a week, awesome. If you get more than 3 days a week, those are bonus days. You don't have to. You just commit to 3 and just make sure you go 3. And even if you go, you don't have to go crazy. And you don't have to be in there for 2 hours, 45 minutes. Make small little changes. Don't change everything all at once. And I promise you, if one day you'll get to the point where if you miss a day at the gym, it messes up your whole day, right? And at that point, you can completely brutalize yourself, and you'll take it like a man, because that's just part of what you do now. You go to the gym, and just remember that when you're in the gym, that's your time. That's your time. Work can't bother you. Family can't bother you. Other responsibilities can't bother you. That's your time. You're not, and you got to be selfish. You got to guard that time. You got to make it a non-negotiable, right? And do that. And then, once you get that under control, then start maybe make a men's health visit. Go to a men's health clinic in your area, or just go to a clinic in your area, and just get checked out. Get your labs drawn. Just kind of see where you're at. It's important. If you don't have kids, you may have a wife or a spouse or a partner, and they love you and they care about you. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you have a parent that cares about you and they worry about you. Maybe you have grandkids. Think about them. Do it for them. All right. Well, I think that's it. I'm going to let you guys go now, and we're going to have. I will see you guys. We're going to do this once a week. And plus I'm going to be, I'll be doing some lives every now and then too. So I hope that you guys enjoy the podcast. We're looking at 30 minutes right now, and I think that's a good amount of time. Yeah. You guys take care. Until next time, go long. Yeah. All right, everybody. You guys take care, Mike.